see you all. I don't see anyone else trying to join at the moment, so I'll go ahead and kick things off. Welcome to another one of our International Oak Society and Global Conservation Consortium for Oak webinars, webinar number 6. I'm Amy Byrne. I'm at the Morton Arboretum, coordinating the Global Conservation Consortium for Oak. And I am joined here with Roderick, International Oak Society President, and my colleague, Angie Wang at the Morton Arboretum. And we will all be co-hosting and facilitating today's webinar. I do apologize, I have to leave shortly after this introduction due to a conflicting meeting, but you're in good hands with Roderick and Angie. So thank you both for facilitating. But we have 2 wonderful presentations in store today. We'll hear from Tarin Toledo and Norma Corona on their Oak Conservation and Research Fund project, and then we'll hear from Barry Clarke on their oak collections. But first, I think we're going to hear from Roderick with a few announcements. Correct, Roderick?
Yes, thank you, Amy. Welcome all. Great to see you all here. Nice number of participants. First of all, I need to thank our sponsors. Always very grateful to, especially the Morton Arboretum, who provides Zoom services for this webinar. Also, our other institution members, Denver Botanic Gardens, Bartlett Tree Experts, Forest Keeling Nursery, Houston Botanic Garden, the John Ferry Garden, and San Antonio Botanical Garden. The big news today, and you may have already seen this as an email announcement this morning, is that the Oak Conservation and Research Grant has launched the latest round of proposals. So the full details of this are available on our website. Members, of course, are encouraged to apply, and especially to forward this announcement to any of your contacts, anyone you know who works with oaks and would be interested in applying. And in fact, the first project we're going to hear about today has in part been funded by an oak conservation and research grant from our latest round in 2022. Other announcements, we have events coming up, planning for next year. We've got Oak Open Days in Australia and New Zealand. Check those out on the website under upcoming events. And we are planning, still not announced, but still planning events in the UK, in Cornwall, and in Belgium in June. So keep your eyes peeled on our website for those announcements. And they will also be announced in the next issue of the Cupule coming out in mid-December. Of course, a principal event for next year will be a triennial conference, which takes place in Oaxaca in October. Traditionally, we don't organize events when we have a conference, in the years we have a conference, but the Tour and Events Committee decided to give it a try this year, and we're hoping that the events in May and June will not conflict, and there'll be, especially for local participants who may not be able to attend the conference, but would be able to attend these events in May and June. So we're hoping to get good attendance there. Finally, a reminder that these webinars are one of the benefits of IOS membership. So any non-members who are attending today, we're delighted to have you here. Great that you're joining us, but please do sign up after the webinar. You can do that on our website, or let us know if we can help with the sign-up process. I think that's all I had for announcements, Amy, so back to you, and I think we can get started with our first presentation.
Okay, great. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll pop those links into the chat for the tours and events and the Oak Conservation Research Fund that Roderick mentioned. But yeah, I'm happy to pass this off to our first presenters. Just a reminder to please stay muted during the presentation. We will have designated time for questions after each presentation and then a bigger discussion at the end. So Norma and Tarin, whenever you're ready, please share your screen. Thank you.
Just a second. Thank you, Amy. Please let me know if the presentation is looking okay.
Yep, looks great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, hi, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. I'm Tarin Toledo, and she's my colleague, Norma Corona. we both work at the Institute of Ecology, or INECOL, which is located in the state of Veracruz in Mexico. It's an institute of research, and it has field stations in the coast or a protected area of cloud forest and also a botanical garden. So I've been studying the cloud forest, which is a fantastic ecosystem, rare, threatened, and the main group that dominates in terms of the structure and also in terms of biodiversity are the oaks, with 47 species reported for the cloud forest in Mexico, and 33 of them are endemic to this ecosystem. We have been studying the natural regeneration, which is this process that goes from the germination until the establishment of seedlings, which is like vital, this recruitment of individuals for the composition of the communities. Due to the lack of information for many rare and endangered species, we have also been doing some studies on germination, early seedling establishment, and propagation. And in particular, I'm very interested in the restoration of the cloud forest landscape, for which the oaks are a fantastic group because we have found that they are really resistant to many conditions of disturbance, including urban areas or urban forests, log forests, pasture lands, abandoned agricultural land, where we assess the effect of different environmental factors on the survival and growth of the transplants. And we are committed with the dissemination of these results through different forums, many workshops with the local communities. And in this work, we work in close collaboration with the Botanical Garden Francisco Javier Clavijero, which is part of the INECOL. And today we are going to share with you the project Your Neighbors, the Oaks, which is a project that we developed thanks to the support of the International Oak Society. And my colleague Norma, who works in the area of education of the Botanical Garden, is going to present the results. And we apologize because since English is not our native language, she's going to read the presentation to make sure that all the main ideas are transmitted. So now I hand it over to Norma.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Well, I would like to comment that the Botanical Garden is a scientific collection of leaf plants for research, conservation, and education purposes. Educationally, the Botanical Garden is conceived as an inclusive learning environment, focused on the appreciation and valuation of bioculturality, use active pedagogies based on humanism and constructivism, gives priority to situated and meaningful learning. In this space, we develop collaborative and interinstitutional work. The neighbor, the oaks, tus vecinos, los encinos in Spanish, has these objectives. Promote the conservation of oaks. Determine how to propagate them. Integrate oaks in the community landscape and to use oaks in the school environment and learning resource. It should be noted that this program is aimed to students in basic education, kindergarten, elementary, and middle school, and special needs education, and it works with the teacher who attend these students. By working with the teachers, we seek to have a cascade effect to influence all the students by enriching their study plans. The project has several stages: design, call and registration, training for participating teachers, development of the work within the school, experience exchange, exhibition of results by the students in the forum, Caminando entre las Ciencias, walking through the sciences. Also, delivery of the results in a portfolio of evidence that intakes of the education process carried out during the scholar year, an evaluation of results, and awarding of prizes. This process is voluntary and is aligned with the 2022 plan of the Mexican Ministry of Public Education called the New Mexican School. We've had fantastic results. 76 schools from 21 municipalities and 32 localities in the state of Veracruz participated. 107 teachers was trained with 15 workshops, 5 virtuals, 10 face-to-face. Your neighbor, the Oaks, worked in total with 7,237 children and their families. The training for teachers consisted of showing them the characteristics of this group of plants, their ecological importance, and how to plant and propagate them. The soil for planting and the collection of acorns was addressed. We weighed them, the trees that they planted. They took care of them and integrate them into their schools. If the condition of the school were not ideal for tree growth, we instructed to plant them in an early area of the community with the commitment to always be aware of their development. The educational work developed throughout the school year was completed in a report that served as the basis for a poster. This was exhibited by the students who participated in the neighbor the Oaks during the forum walking through the sciences held in the Botanical Garden. The results of each project within the school it is evaluated according to its level of performance. Initial, if the work was only done within the school. Intermediate, if it goes beyond the school and reaches the families. And advanced level, if the work is developed together with the community. Here we can see how the children were working on exhibition of the different topics and how they planted oaks in their schools. 41% of the schools we worked with reached an initial level. 52% reached an intermediate level. That is, the families were involved, and 7% reached the school and the local community. The work development was approached in different ways, using biological material to learn about oak trees, acorns, the shape of the leaves, and how to prepare soil for planting. The families were involved in the planting of oak trees and in adopting a tree, caring for it and watching its development. The work in the community consisted on informing them about the importance of oaks and forests, using materials, written materials, talks, and digital media. Below are images of how the work was done. Work with teachers, work at school, tours in the community and in the Botanical Garden to recognize the oaks, planting trees in the community, the development of digital books with information and rhymes to remember the commitment to conserve the oaks. This is an example of digital books, and this is some.
Sorry, Norma, do you have a link that is not working there?
Sorry. Well, yeah, we are back.
Okay.
It was a great experience to work on this type of projects with the students and the teacher. All of them continue with the commitment to conserve the oaks trees and to make this information known in their localities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was the presentation. I don't know if there are comments or questions. I will stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Norma and Tarin. That was fascinating and highly inspiring. Really interesting to see your work. We're ready to take any questions. Please feel free to unmute and ask your question or post something in the chat. Al, did I see you had a question there? Sure. While people are thinking up questions, I have one. Well, I got several, but don't know where to start. What was the reaction you had from the teachers? Had the teachers experienced anything like this before? I mean, had they, or was this something completely new from them? And are there other similar projects in Mexico that you based this on, or was this something new?
Fue algo nuevo. Había trabajado con otros grupos de plantas, pero no necesariamente con encinos.
They have been, this project is part of the Fairchild Challenge, and in the Botanical Garden here at INECOL, there have been other themes before, like the Botanical Gardens that were promoted in the schools. There has not been work like this before, particularly not with oak or oak trees that were like embraced so well in the schools. The teachers are like so keen and so curious. So the idea is that we give them the information, but then they develop different projects according to what they share with the students, and also they take on the ideas of the students to do the different studies in each school.
Podríamos agregar.
Perdón, y él estaba preguntando si había en otras escuelas o iniciativas así en otras partes de México.
No.
¿Somos los únicos?
Así con los maestros, sí.
Sí. So as far as we are aware, we are the only ones that work in this manner with the teachers of many schools.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Que fueron concientizados de que los encinos deberían de estar cerca del bosque de niebla o de su ambiente específico para, y fueron los maestros con los que se trabajó.
So an important part that we worked with was in terms of the habitat that was surrounding the schools. So trying to do this matching between the species of the locality that need to be near their right habitat. And particularly in this region, it was cloud forest oak species.
Okay, well, that actually leads up to one of the questions in the chat, which was the same question I was going to ask, is what species of oak did you actually plant?
Many. So many.
Really? Huh.
Like Quercus germana, Quercus artori, Quercus jalapensis, Quercus lancifolia, Quercus.
Wow.
And in many cases, we didn't know because if they collected the seeds in their localities, it was not always possible to know which was the exact species, because as you well know, oaks are so tricky to determine
Really?
their right species, no?
That's fantastic. I think I saw photos of Quercus corrugata as well. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's, well, of course, you are in a fantastically privileged location for oak species, but that's great that you're sharing that. And many of the comments in the chat are actually just congratulating you. Tim Boland says congratulations on such an impactful community project, and that's absolutely right. I mean, it's great the way the whole community has been involved. Brian Gibbons is asking, well, he says, well done and inspiring, and would you mind sharing educational material that you have developed? Is that possible?
Oh, yeah. It's all in Spanish, but we happily share it, yes. We made like short videos so that the teachers could look at these short videos in whenever they can. So yes, of course.
Great. Okay, if you share it to me, I'll put it up on the, we have a page on our website on the grants and one page for your grant, so we can put up the information there, and Brian, you should be able to access it there once it's up. Janet Bax also says, wonderful project, reaching the community, congratulations. So does Tana Silverland. Thank you for those comments. Another question from T. Chung. Are there any oaks being threatened or endangered in this ecological challenge? I presume you do have threatened oaks in your area, right? That you're working with?
Like 17 to cloud forest, and we are working at the moment in an action plan in collaboration with the Morton Arboretum for 11 species for this watershed involving different institutions like smallholders, also the government and NGOs, and particularly local nurseries with, like different activities. So yes, we have many endangered species, and we are working particularly with the focus of recovering endangered species.
Great. I was actually in your area recently and had a very exciting experience of seeing Quercus insignis there near Veracruz. Is that being worked with at all? That's one of the threatened oaks there, right?
I'm so proud. We have planted like 11 restoration plantings with more than 900 individuals, and it's a super resistant species. We move it like 1,000 meters above the seed source site, and it does fantastic. And also in bracken areas, of course, controlling for weeding, and it survived. So it's a very resistant species.
Brilliant. Yeah. Excellent. Hugo Ribeiro is also saying congratulations from Portugal. Well, I mean, I don't know if anyone else has any further comments or questions. I'm just thrilled to see, it's so great to see kids involved. I'm hoping that some of those kids might be our future iOS members one day and continue to work with oaks and those species. Any other questions? Okay, Brian is asking, Brian Gibbons, is Alan Coombs a resource for this project? Are you in touch with Alan in Puebla?
We do collaborate with Alan, not for this particular project, but in other, in the action plan we are doing in the restoration plantings, because for the collection and determination of specimens, he has also been a very important advisor. Mm-hmm. With Marisela, her wife, yes.
Are you aware of any projects in other states that are going to be modeled on what you were doing and doing similar projects with schools in other states of Mexico?
Not as far as I'm aware, no, not yet, but it's a very good idea, mm-hmm. No, to share it in other botanical gardens as well.
We'll try and publicize your results and your work, and hopefully people will take notice. Great.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. A final call for any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Norma and Tarin. That was fascinating, and I see Al's clapping there. I think all of us are clapping one way or another. Thank you very much, and good luck with this project and all your future work. Okay, now I'm delighted to move on to the second part of our webinar, which is a presentation from Barry Clarke of the Sir Harold Hillier Gardens in the UK. This will be completely different. I believe Barry has a sort of show and tell about his evergreen oaks there, so I'm really looking forward to that. Barry, I think you're muted at the moment, but when you're ready, you can take it away, and we'll try it. There we go, and we've shared your screen so everyone can see you. Over to you, Barry.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. It's really lovely to be able to speak to you about the gardens because it's a place that I'm very passionate about. Hopefully, you've heard of the Sir Harold Hillier Gardens. In the UK, it's got the second largest oak collection in the country. Perhaps some of our specimens are a bit younger or a bit older than the other collection at Chevthorne Barton, but we certainly have an immense collection here. Our oak collection is around about 365 different types of oak. A lot of those are species, but we also have cultivar oaks here as well. If you've ever heard of Sir Harold Hillier, you may know that he was a collector, quite a prominent collector, but he traveled immensely around the whole world, collecting from different areas of the world, whereas previous collectors back in history perhaps concentrated on particular areas, say China or wherever. Mostly, of course, to do with transport back then. Of course, there's transport in the 19th, 20th century, especially the 20th, 21st century has been a lot better for people to travel around and collect different species. So he managed to collect a variety of plants. But he did have a real passion for oaks, and he wanted a place where he could grow his plants particularly well, not particularly focusing on oaks, but oaks was certainly a backbone of that collection. So the gardens is quite a young garden. So our collection isn't that old. So it's only been going since 1953. Yet it is, we do have some quite maturish specimens for such a young garden. There are some older trees here of native origin that are older than that, but generally they are focused within that sort of age group. So the name Alan Coombs was mentioned, and I imagine he's watching, or his wife Maricela may be watching. And he was, of course, the prominent collector, advisor, and knowledgeable person in the Hillier Gardens for nearly 30 years. I don't think I could ever fill his shoes, certainly when it comes to oaks, but I try my best. I've been the botanist here for some 12, 13 years, and prior to that was working in propagation. So I really enjoyed the last presentation because promoting propagation, especially of oaks and tree species in general, is something I'm really passionate about, and passing it on to the next generation is important to us too. So here our garden is an ornamental garden. It's a collection of plants, but it is also a collection for conservation. So a lot of our oak species here are highly important for their conservation value, and we have some incredibly rare plants, not only rare in the wild, but rare within collections as well. So today I've brought along a few samples which I'm going to show. Of course, here in the UK, it is autumn, and most of our deciduous trees have lost their leaves. There's just a few hanging around. So I thought it might be quite nice to present our evergreen collection, or let's see some sections of our evergreen plants to you. And what I thought it might be nice is to show you what I like, the ones that really appeal to me, the ones that I've made a connection with, that I've perhaps worked with and propagated and seen grown over many years. So I thought that would be kind of a nice thing to do. If you want more information about the Hillier Gardens itself and our plant collections here and some of the plants we grow, and it's a very good resource as well for oaks, you could invest in perhaps the Hillier Manual. I imagine lots of people know what this is anyway, but the section on oaks in it is quite comprehensive. So it's worth investing in that if you haven't got it already. And there's been input into that from Alan Coombs himself, of course, and also from Roy Lancaster, who is one of our patrons at the moment, but was, of course, curating the Botanic Garden for this Botanic Garden for some time too. Both Alan and Roy, and also other collectors, have introduced oak species to the collection over many years. The Quercus collection here is one of our national collections, so it's highly important for conservation in the UK of cultivated plants. That is not just cultivated species, but not just cultivated varieties, but also cultivated species. And particularly those we focus on are those which were wild collected and are have status of being rare or endangered in the wild. We have around about 23 that are on the red list. So those ones are more highly prized in the collection. And of course, our propagation of those oaks is highly important too. So here in the gardens, we have just recently had a new propagation unit built, a new glass house, a new area set up. So we can bring our propagation skills to the next level, bring what we produce to the next level, and produce some good oaks to put into the gardens. So we're very lucky that we've been blessed with a lot of people that have sponsored us over the years, who have given us material. Alan himself has collected many plants through Asia and also, of course, in Mexico. So we have some excellent wild source material. So if you are in the UK and you do want to see a really spectacular variety of oaks, this is the place to come. So we're in Romsey, which is closest to Southampton. That's sort of the south of the country. We enjoy quite a good climate. It's a typical southern British climate. It's not Cornwall warm, but we are relatively sheltered where we are. It's a good spot here. The soil type in particular is particularly interesting because it varies quite dramatically. Our areas around here, we're to the east we have Winchester, and to the west and down to the south we have Southampton, and behind us in the north we have Salisbury and the Salisbury Plains. So as you can imagine, around Salisbury sort of area is chalk, so it's very alkaline. Around Winchester area is very acid. So there's a mixture of those two things in the garden itself. So our soil types go from bagshot sand right up in our woodlands, very acidic ground, all the way to almost alkaline in the latter part of the last part of our winter garden. So we can grow such a varied amount of plants for that very reason. That makes it the perfect spot to be growing many different sorts of varieties of oak. So the ones I wanted to bring to you today to show you were, like I say, some of our evergreen ones. And I wanted to start really with one of the probably most important ones from the early era of the gardens. And that was one that was collected by Sir Harold Hillier. You'll probably all know this very well. It's a well-known oak, but it is becoming particularly rare in the wild, and that's Rhizophylla. So Rhizophylla is, of course, a very important oak. Because we're preserving it in collections, but it's highly cultivated now, so you can find it in most collections. And in America, I know they have it in a lot of collections over there. Here in the UK, we aren't necessarily blessed with fruiting. They don't tend to fruit very well, especially in this region anyway, but they do grow particularly well. This is a champion Rhizophylla in the UK, seed collected by Harold in, I think, 1979, and grows in our woodlands. Spectacular large plant. Large tree, and has never suffered any damage, grows well, it's a very sheltered area, and is really enjoying it there. Occasionally we do have seedlings come up of hybrids, so it is flowering, it is producing pollen, and we get certain hybrids. I know there's some well-known falcata hybrids. Not sure what this one is, but it's one that was dug up as a seedling in '96 and planted out in the collection. It's semi-evergreen, so it does lose some foliage. It has in past years given us particularly good red coloration, but for some reason this year it hasn't particularly given us good coloration, unfortunately. But it just shows that you can get some really interesting hybrids from Rhizophylla. Of course, this is the loquat oak, as they call it, the loquat oak. It is subgenus Quercus, section lobate, and is a really spectacular oak. So we have several plantings of that, but the champion is the most interesting one. For me, I quite like Ingementum. I've always been a person who likes Ingementum, not just on oaks, but on other plants too. But if you're looking for a plant with a spectacular Ingementum, you can't do better than this evergreen beauty. A rarity, really, from Cyprus is Ulnifolia. You may have seen this one. It also comes in a silvery leaf form from that said island. And I have a few acorns growing at the moment of that silverleaf form. But the interesting bit is the Ingementum. I don't know if you'll get the real feel of it on this camera. Probably not. No, I don't think you really see it. But it's a really coppery, orangey sort of color under there. It's a spectacular little oak. It can be anything from a small shrubby sort of oak to a largish tree, or let's say a medium-sized tree rather than a large tree. And the one in the gardens, we have two. We have a young one, where the indimentum is very pristine on young oaks of this species, but on older oaks, it tends to get a little bit of mildew and some fungal infection underneath the leaves and discolors the coloration. But in the young foliage, it's always very attractive. I love the shape of the leaves as well, that they're rounded. You don't see many oaks that have completely sort of like rounded. Okay, there is some serration in the margin, but generally they're kind of like a round leaf, and I think that's very appealing when you look at it. Another small oak, and I think an absolutely fabulous oak, is this one here. This is Monomatrica. Monomatrica is a small evergreen oak native to China. It grows up in mountain forests, where it sort of makes vast thickets. So it's very low growing, no more than a couple of meters, although when grown in cultivation, it does tend to grow a little bit bigger. And we have a plant here which is probably about 2.5 meters tall, something like that, maybe slightly taller. The fascinating thing about this little oak is the acorns. It has the most massive acorns for the size of the plant. Round about this. Ours always fruits very well. These large acorns appear around about September time. It's quite early actually, so I'd say August and September is when you start to see the acorns maturing. So it's a very early one to mature in the gardens. Unfortunately, that's a sad thing about the Hillier Gardens. We have such an amazing oak collection, yet not a lot of our oaks will set seed. You get a lot from some of the European species, but those from further afield don't tend to set seed well. Of course, it's the climate. They don't have a long enough summer, enough light to produce acorns. And that's when one of my favorite ones is a real letdown, because I would love to see this plant with acorns on it. And that's Dolicholepis. I adore the leaves of Dolicholepis because they have this shininess to them. You might be able to see it there. It's quite a sort of glossy leaf. But when they start to produce fruits, they flower well. But the fruits do start to develop, as you can see under there, but they've never really get much further than that. If we had a longer summer, if we had more heat, you'd get these luxurious cups and wonderful acorns in as well. So we say, oh, I might see them one day, but at the moment it's not. It's just producing these cups which never really develop. It's rather sad. But it's a lovely tree, Chinese species. Kind of a small to medium-sized tree. We have several specimens of that, some young ones and a couple of older ones too. Another really interesting one, this is from North America, it goes into Mexico as well, New Mexico, Arizona, California, is this one here, Tomentella. Tomentella is really different from oaks, and in fact, when I present this to some of our students or guests or visitors, they can't really make out that it's an oak at all. The leaves, as you can see, are very glossy. They're quite corrugated. The margins are quite sharp with dentate margins, but on others, they're quite smooth. So it can be quite varied. It's an interesting oak. We also have the hybrid with Chrysolepis, which seems to lose the glossiness, as you can see on the leaves, not quite as glossy. Chrysolepis, of course, as well, if you know it, has a real interesting indumentum. It tends to have a golden indumentum underneath the leaf, but this has lost it, unfortunately. Although I could say the rachis, on both the rachis is quite yellowish, goldenish yellowish, so sort of color. So that's quite interesting about them. But you can see the inherent traits, the parentage in the hybrid. A really interesting one for me, and personally interesting one for me, because I helped to preserve the plant, and that's Engleriana. Engleriana isn't often seen in the UK. In fact, probably very rarely seen in the UK. I know they grow specimens of it in Spain and the warmer countries, but in Europe, but generally don't see it in the UK. Fabulously long lanceolate leaves, as you can see, glossy evergreen plant. And the petioles going into the rachis also have this lovely golden color, which is really appealing. And the venation is quite pronounced, which I find nice too. It does produce acorns, only a few. They do develop though, so I have grown a few seedlings from this. That's quite interesting. This one also does come from cuttings. So a few cuttings that are produced of this have worked well and rooted quite quickly. So it's one that could possibly be promoted and put into other collections. But yeah, that's a fabulous, fabulous oak. One of my favorites from China. I use, my students tell me off because I say this is one of my favorites. No, this is one of my favorites. They say, how many favorites have you got, Barry? I think I should just say I like them all, and that would just get past that. But this is a fantastic one from China. This is a Chinese oak. In fact, this specimen was collected by Alan Coombs. This is Oxyodon. And Oxyodon also has an indimentum. Again, you may not see it too well on the camera. It's a whitish grayish indimentum, which is quite beautiful on the tall older trees because you can stand underneath and see it. However, I love the serrations on this plant as well, and just the glossiness of the leaves and the way that they contrast with the color of the stem as well. That's quite interesting about some oaks, how their greenness or yellowness of the leaves and the petiole contrasts sometimes with the color of the stem. And on this, you can see it's kind of a beigey gray, grayish brown color on the stem. So it's an impactful plant. Our smaller plants haven't flowered yet. We've got two smaller plants, I would say, which are maybe 3 to 4 meters high. And we have a much older one as well. And the older one has produced acorns, only a couple in the time I've been here, but they are magnificent. One thing that really appealed to me about oaks was the acorn cups. And I've seen many oaks in my life. I've been able to travel quite a lot, so I've had the opportunity to see them in the wild. And I've always been entranced by the acorn cups. And on this one here, the cups are they're almost like they were a cup and they've been squashed because they have layers in them. These layered acorn cups, absolutely beautiful if you ever get to see them and experience them. So I also have here the rough leaf ones, although I do like the glossiness and smoothness of some of those evergreens which have that glossiness over them. Some of the rough leafed ones as well are nice with that crassula-like look. So as you can see, this one here is rugosa, relatively well known in collections, I guess. And on the back as well, again, the indimentum is not really showing up on the camera, but it does have quite a decent yellowish golden indimentum on the back there with tiny little hairs. I can just about see it. In real life, it's actually really quite pronounced, but it has this roughness, matte look to it. So it's completely opposite from the glossy ones, but the matteness itself is an attractive feature. But one of my favorite, most rough-leafed oaks has got to be Crassifolia. Crassifolia, relatively common in bigger oak collections. Again, it has the indimentum. Might be able to see if I put it to the light. There you go. On the back, you can see this golden indimentum. The front of the leaves are not quite as matte as the rugosa. As you see, they are a bit glossy. But for me, the most interesting thing about Crassifolia is the emerging foliage. So the emergence growth that comes out of this in the spring is fascinating. It's got to be its most renowned feature. It comes out red, and on some specimens it comes out pink, and it's quite furry and hairy, covered in small hairs, and just this very appealing plant, I find. And what I've done with this, and I know all those people out there who are purists will go, oh no, he didn't do that, but I've actually pollarded one of these to try and see how much of that new foliage I could get out of it. And actually, if you do, you get this fascinating plant, which you can keep as a shrubby sort of tree, but gives you this wonderful new growth, which I think is a really good feature. Now, I don't usually go around chopping trees to try and get things out of them, but on this, I think it was really worth it. Chinese plants, and one that is becoming relatively well known, is Acuta. So Acuta to me is the most unlike oak you can come across, really. Yet it's relatively common, and it's common in places where I've lived around the world. When I was younger, I lived in Japan, and I did used to see this quite a lot because it is spread throughout the 3 islands in Japan. You can find it in Honshu, Kyushu, and also in Shikoku. On a recent expedition I went to Shikoku, I saw quite a lot of this plant growing, and it's absolutely stunning in the wild. Sadly, no acorns to collect. But we have a really nice specimen here, a large plant. We could do with more of it. It does, again, come from cuttings. So if you don't get seed, because our seed never matures here, but if you don't get seed, it is actually relatively easy from cuttings. I find young tip cuttings of fresh new growth of that current season's extension growth does root really well. So Acuta is a good one to put on your list of plants to have. So the garden has a pretty comprehensive collection of oaks from all around the world. The Chinese and Mexican sections of oaks are probably the most pronounced in the garden, and some of the rarest in the gardens. We have, for example, Fufuracea, the Mexican oak, which is now becoming incredibly rare. We have a really decent specimen of that. And what we really need to be doing is getting on top of the propagation and making sure these things are passed out to other collections. And we're trying to do that. And we're hoping with our new prop unit in place that we'll be able to do that. So if you are ever in the UK or this way, do come and see us and come and see our collection and enjoy it.
Thank you, Barry. That was fascinating, Barry. I think this is the first time in our webinars that we've had someone actually talk and show rather than put up slides, and I really enjoy that. Perhaps it has something to do with your background in the performance arts, but it's really great to see the oaks shown that way. I have some questions come up. Let's see. One early on was, are cultivated oaks able to support as many species of insects as the native oaks? Interesting question.
That is an interesting question. Not though that we've done surveys, but there seems very little difference, especially where the cultivars are not dissimilar from the species. So, I mean, we've seen no dramatic differences in those cultivars of Roba, for example. We mainly have Roba, Rubra, Coccinia, those sort of hybrid, those sort of cultivated plants. But we can't say there's any noted difference, to be quite honest. We have plenty of squirrels in the gardens, and the squirrels will like acorns from any of them.
Right. I was just going to say, well, for us in the southern hemisphere who cultivate oaks, obviously we're bringing in these are, we're putting in oaks in a location where all the insects or all the wildlife would be foreign to it. So it's quite interesting to see that some insects or wildlife do prey on the oaks in a good way or bad way.
It may be because our biodiversity of insect life and animal life is actually a lot lower than it is in southern countries anyway. We don't have the diversity in flora, and we don't have the diversity in animal life either, or invertebrate life. So it could be that reason.
Sure. Great. Another question here from Tana Silverland. How does the spring foliage of Quercus crassifolia compare to that of Quercus pyrenica? I have a lot of Quercus pyrenica in my garden and love the furry pink buds.
Yeah, it is. That was the next one I would have said for this. I mean, it is fantastic. It is, but crassifolia is just a bigger plant in general. I mean, bigger leaves, bigger impact, I think, and it also slightly is faster in its emergence, so you get a bigger show quicker, if you like, and it's a much deeper red color in the actual species. There is a cultivar called Flamingo, which is more pinky sort of color, but yeah, it's definitely, in my personal opinion, I would say superior.
I was fascinated by what your experiment with pollarding. If you have any photos of that, it'd be great to share those. I think it's a really interesting concept. I didn't do that, but I do have experience of like when you cut down an oak and the sprout from the stump can produce some fantastic color and leaf shapes as well. Other questions? Hugo Ribeiro says, fantastic. Which species have the best results with cuttings?
That's difficult. I mean, some obviously are really tricky. The ones that are what I would class as easy, as in minimal amount of rooting hormone, minimal conditions like a simple mist unit with bottom heat, and you will need those conditions for almost any oak, is Rhizophylla. That's easy. Like I said before, the Acuta does really well. I must admit, I've not tried any deciduous species yet, so I'm really looking forward to trying those when we're all set up. Yeah, I've tried the Oxyodon. That's actually really difficult to root, but I did get a little bit of it to root. Calophylla I got to root as well from a cutting. So it's with a collection of 365 different types of oak, going to take me a long time to trial all of them, but I will.
Sure. No, I think that the whole issue of propagating from cuttings with oaks is a fascinating subject. And I mean, when I first got into oaks about 15 years ago, I remember the first thing I said was, forget cuttings, oaks will not grow from cuttings. But that has changed so much. I mean, there's so much experimentation going on and new techniques used. So I think it's really interesting to see what will happen with that in the future. I got a question from Caroline Boisset, who says, have you tried air layering?
Yes, and it works for some, not for others. For some reason, some oaks just would not do it. I mean, I'm a big fan of air layering. My boss doesn't like it because he doesn't like seeing the layers on the trees, but it does work on some plants. But I'd say that some are, their wood ripens too quickly, and the wound closes too quickly before the roots actually start to develop. So some it just will not work on no matter what you do. I've tried keeping the wounds open, all sorts of things, but some do from air layering and also from ground laying. So it is worth trying, especially if you've got a lot of epicormic growth or any suckering growth from the base. It's worth trying it with that. And you could also try stooling. So if you're prepared to lose a plant, let's say, and you've got maybe others, you could stool a plant and try and get them to root themselves that way.
Yes, I know that conservationists in San Diego, at San Diego Zoo, are using air layering for Quercus cedrosensis, like in the wild, not in their garden, right? And getting some results with that. And Nina Basuk at Cornell has done a lot of work with stooling, quite successfully, I believe. Charles Sniers, sorry,
yep.
someone?
Oh, that was me.
Sorry,
I was
Angie?
just gonna make sure that you asked that question. Yep. Okay.
Okay, Charles Sniers asked, are seedlings of cultivated Quercus rhizophylla always hybrids?
It's a very good question, but obviously, like I said, their seed never matures, so it's only the pollen that is from the rhizophylla. We don't ever have seedlings from it, not in the UK.
Oh, I thought you said you pulled up some hybrids from underneath the tree.
Not, yeah, that they came from a cross with something else, though. It doesn't produce acorns. Not that I've ever seen. Not in my time here. It produces acorns, but they're never viable. I've tried to sow them, but they're usually absolutely minute and don't do anything. So anything that is a hybrid comes from the other parent.
I see. So that one you showed was from underneath another tree, and you suspect Quercus rhizophylla to be the pollen parent. Is that right?
Only because it's in an area where there are quite a few oaks together around the rhizophylla, and it showed the nearest traits to that plant. So,
okay,
I suppose it's a presumption, but it's not my presumption. So,
right. Question from Sven. Thanks for this very interesting talk. What do you think about the hardiness of Quercus dolicholepis and Quercus oxyodon? Ever had frost damage in the UK on these? Because he would like to try them with Bockrike Arboretum in Belgium, if he can find a source.
Yeah, I've never seen anything much on the oxyodon. You'd expect it to, because it looks like it would be quite fragile. You know, you would think that it would burn at the tips, and that I've never seen anything significant. Certainly, even as young plants, they've never really had much significant damage. The Dolicholepis, that has had damage on the tips now and again when we have had a really bad frost. Here in the gardens, our general coldest, let's say average coldest we would get here is sort of like -5, -6. Up to maybe down to, I should say, -8, but there have been occasional snaps of down as far as -14, and we don't see a lot of frost damage on most things, but the Dolicholepis is in a particularly sheltered spot. I think that's the thing. If you can give shelter and it's the cold winds that are going to be the problem, then you could probably get away with it.
Okay. Sven goes on to comment that he's done tests with air layering on several species and all successful so far: Quercus acuta, Quercus engleriana, Quercus rhizophylla, Quercus roba, Quercus nigra, and Quercus suba. That's great, Sven. Maybe you should give the next presentation. Great. Angie, have I missed any questions in the chat? There was a personal comment from Brian to you, Barry. I'll send it on if you haven't seen it. I know people were asking, for a list of the oaks that you mentioned, so they could get the names right, and I put those in the chat. If I missed any and you still didn't get the name, or you were asking, let us know, and we'll try to see which one is missed. Okay, a couple more questions. Andy Schmitz, could you show the cover of the Trees and Shrubs book again? There are a few different ones on Amazon. You have the latest edition, right? I think it's the 9th edition, is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, this is the latest edition, I believe. So it's got thicker and thicker over the years, but that is it.
And it's known as the Hillier's Manual, right? Is that the full
It's known
name?
as Hillier's Manual. Yeah, it's trees and shrubs only, so it's no herbaceous in here. So yeah, it's the Hillier Manual Trees and Shrubs, and there's a good Quercus section in there. There's also a good rubus section. I'm a rubus guy. I can throw that in.
Great. Another question from T. Chung. When it comes to cultivating, hybridizing oaks, what are the characteristics of the plants you normally are pursuing? Growth, beauty, colors, or mostly disease resistance?
Disease resistance is a difficult thing to quantify, really. So really, we'd be looking for growth, particularly attractive qualities, because generally we're looking to attract the general public. Even, something is difficult to preserve if it doesn't have attractive appeal. So, I mean, that is generally what you're trying to do. Maybe something which had good emergence growth is perhaps evergreen and gives you good color in the autumn. Something like that. So you want to get every quality you can. So we're just trying to extend the season of interest, really. So you just want a plant which is going to give you as much as possible. That's what you'd be doing when you're trying to breed something, really. So trying to get the best qualities from various sort of species.
Great. Angie, thank you. Angie's just put a link to the manual on Amazon, so if you're interested in that, I do recommend it. I had the 8th edition and then the 9th edition. Great books. Great books. Good. I think that may be it on the questions. Oh no, I just got one in more. Let's see. Joe, Douglas Justice saying it's a fantastic talk. Quite agree. That was great, Barry. It was, you did mention your travels, and it was very good to have you on the Texas Oak Open Days last year. Really enjoyed it, your presence there. So thank you very much for this presentation. Really good, really interesting. So just usually when at the end of these presentations, we open up the floor if anyone wants to make any comment or question about iOS business in general, they'd be very welcome to do so. So please put it in the chat or unmute yourself. Just one comment. Oh yes, the Q&A. Yeah, well, Q&A has been very good in the last 2 webinars. So that's great. Now, great to have people speak up too, so don't be shy. Okay, well, looks like people, no comments so far, so I think, okay, I think we'll close it there. Thanks again to our presenters. Thank you all of you for watching. There will be recording. If you want to share this with anyone, there will be a recording available for iOS members on our website soon. We'll let you know about that. And we'll have a next webinar in February, most likely, and you can look forward to the next edition of the Cupule, which should have announcements about upcoming events. So I think
there was
that, yes.
Sorry, there was one more comment from Andy asking Barry if they can get an email to contact you.
Andy, I can, if that's okay with you, Barry, I can share that, but all of you, bear in mind, iOS members can find contact details for any other member on our membership directory. If you need help with that, just write to us, let me know. But that's one of the benefits of being a member. So we'll be happy if you write to us at the iOS. We'll be happy to put you in touch with our presenters specifically if you wish. Good. Well, I think we're just on time for the hour. So thanks everyone for participating, and we'll see you at the next one, I hope. Bye. Bye all. Thank you. And thank you, Angie, for helping out.